No, this is the visitor center, so I think you just have to, that's the office, so the visitor center's right there.
Okay, well, I'll pull up over there closer to the visitor center then.
Not very many people up here.
No, not really. Oh, look at this sign. Caution, rattlesnakes. Alright, well, we'll be very careful. How about that? I think it's a good idea.
Not originally from Texas. He was born in New York City in 1824 as a 4-Irish immigrant. We don't know a whole lot about King's early life. He didn't remember a whole lot about his early life. We know that by the time he was 8 years old, he had been orphaned. He was sent to live with an aunt. The aunt didn't know what to do with him, so she had him apprenticed to a jeweler in Manhattan. And the idea behind the apprenticeship was that the jeweler would take him in, provide food, clothing, and shelter, and Richard would provide labor for the jeweler and hopefully would learn the business. That way when he became an adult, he had a trade. So stop right here for just a minute. I want to point out to you the importance of where we're at. This stream is called Santa Gertrudis Creek, and it is the whole reason this ranch exists. Somewhere in this general vicinity is where Richard King camped for the first time in 1852 and made the decision that this is where he wanted to start his ranch. Now at the time, he was still operating steamboats out of Brownsville. Started this ranch, there wouldn't have been any trees out here. He described this as a vast treeless plain. But by the 1890s, the landscape looked like it does today. So the question becomes, how did the trees get here? In the 1890s, they were using those anchor chains to knock down brush and dragging them with teams of mules. So even before we had heavy machinery, we were finding innovative ways to get rid of scrub brush. And that's made out of adobe. That's mud that was dug up from the creek bottom, formed into bricks by our ranch hands. And when you see a silo like that, it'd be natural to assume that's where they stored grain for the cattle, but that was used for a different purpose. Shorthorn. They've got all the best characteristics of both sets of ancestors. From the Brahma, they get a very loose hide, so they don't overheat in the summer. That hide's also very thick, so they're resistant to a lot of parasites. From the yeah, they're young. Yeah, they're not worried about us at all, are they?
One in it?
Another one.
Oh my God.
There's no one in the water. Look at that. They're trying to cool off, aren't they? Yeah, they've still got development on their antlers, so they're young. Yeah. How old should they be? They probably look like they're a couple years old. That's what I would guess.
2.5, 3 years old?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And Bob was the manager of this ranch until he died in 1974. Now,
so is the ranch still owned by the King family?
It's still owned by the Clayburgh branch of the family, yes ma'am. It's today it's structured as a privately held corporation stock, and I was talking to one of our biologists about a month ago. They were out here taking samples. But there are fish out there, a lot of wading birds like egrets and herons, cormorants, those kind of things out here. Sometimes you can see they'll let cowboys come out here and do some fishing.
That's beautiful.
I've seen people fishing out here. I've never seen anybody swim in that lake, and that's a good idea because there's alligators in it. Matter of fact, I guess about 6 weeks ago they killed an 11.5-foot alligator in that lake.
Whoa.
Yeah, big one. So alligators were native to this part of Texas, but in the late 19th century they pretty much hunted them to extinction. In the 1970s, the ranch decided they wanted to restore the ecosystem as close to what it had been in Captain King's day as possible. So they got 7 alligators from the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville and released them onto the ranch. And all of our gators are descended from those 7. They're in that lake, they're in the creek. There's some more lakes a little bit west of here that we see alligators in. Surveyor's stake, somebody left out one of these pastures and it split his hoof. And it caused him to walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Now, for some reason, that didn't affect him when he ran full speed. He didn't have a limp when he ran. And Assault wound up winning the Triple Crown in 1946. He was the first Texas-bred horse to win the Kentucky Derby. To this date, he's the only Texas-bred horse to win the Triple Crown.
Oh, wow.
There's some more. Come back to this brick building on the left in a minute. I want to draw your attention first to this large white building in front of us. That building's called the commissary. It is the oldest building on this ranch. Dates back to the late 1850s. And if Captain King could come back today, that's the only building on the ranch he'd recognize. This is by Captain King from the U.S. Army in 1875. There was a real problem in the 1870s with cattle thieves from Mexico raiding ranches and villages in this area. Captain King wanted to make sure he had plenty of firepower in case he was ever attacked. To my knowledge, he never had to fire those cannon off in anger, but he did like to shoot them off on the 4th of July. Coming up on the left, we're about to pass a little gazebo, and if you look on top of it, there's a bell on top of it. That's Mrs. King's dinner bell. So they'd ring that bell when it was time for dinner. That's also what alerted everybody to get out when the old house burned down. Now, today nobody lives in the main house full time. The last full-time resident died in about the mid-1970s, and at that point they made a decision to keep the house open for the benefit of the entire family. There are between 150 and 200 descendants today. Any of them can come stay in the house when they feel like it. They can bring guests. There's a swimming pool back there, tennis courts. And every summer they'll have a family reunion where they all come out. Sometimes family members get married in the main house. So the house gets used, it's just not lived in on a full-time basis. This brick building here on our left, if you follow King Ranch on Facebook or Instagram, they love to take pictures in front of this building. This is Mrs. King's carriage house, and you can see 2 dates on the building. 1853 at the top is the date the ranch was founded. At the bottom you'll see the date 1909. That's the date that building was built. Now, these are those American Reds I was telling you about. So you'll notice some of them look just like Santa Gertrudis. Some look more Angusy. It just depends on the percentage.
Wow.
And if you look out way on the other side of that pasture on the left, you'll see big grain elevator out there. Yep. That's where our feedlots are located. So what we do is if the cattle start out on grass, when they reach a certain age, certain weight, they're moved to the feedlots and they're fed grain to fatten them up for market. And our feedlots have the capacity to hold 15,000 head of cattle. I think there's about 9,000, 9,500 out there right now.